Join me tonight on Twitch at 11:30 p.m. Eastern at the conclusion of Sunday Night Football, where we'll talk about everything that happened in Week 11 of the NFL season. Link to join below. And now, on with our feature presentation. This man right here is Marion Campbell. He is perhaps the quintessential example for guys who are great coordinators who had no business ever being a head coach, and had no idea what they were doing when they assumed the top leadership position. As a defensive coordinator, Campbell was somewhat brilliant. The Atlanta Falcons had a consistently good defense throughout the first half of the 1970s under his reign, constantly ranking inside the top half of the league. And when he was the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, under head coach Dick Vermeil, Philly's defense was superb, as they finished with the fewest points allowed in both 1980 and 1981. Their defense was a big reason why they finally had some success around this time period after a decade and a half in the cellar, and why they got to make it to Super Bowl 15, playing in their first Super Bowl in franchise history. As a defensive coordinator, the Swamp Fox did a lot of great things, and there's a reason why many people consider him to be one of the greatest defensive assistants of all time. But as a head coach, my God, the man absolutely stunk. How this man got not one, not two, but three separate stints as head coach, even getting two with the same team, despite the fact that the first one failed so miserably, is beyond me. I've talked at length about how bad of a coach Campbell was, so if you want to learn more about that, click the card in the upper right corner. And quite honestly, it's tough to pick just one moment of Marion Campbell's career that I can truly consider to be the worst, where he was clearly out of his element. Was this the moment right here that we're about to talk about? It's debatable. At the very least, it's up there. Because even though it might not seem that bad on the surface, it might seem like a gross over-exaggeration on my part when you watch it for the first time, trust me, when you hear what Campbell and the responsible parties had to say afterwards as to what their logic was, oh, your jaw is going to be on the floor, as you wonder how the heck the Eagles went from a future Hall of Fame head coach in Dick Vermeil to this man overnight. Because in a 1983 game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Colts, Marion Campbell decided to call what had to be, under the circumstances, quite possibly, the stupidest field goal attempt in franchise history. And this is the story behind the kick. Before I talk about the play, and more importantly for the purposes of this, what was said after the game that made this play a million times worse, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, and how it was going before the disastrous kick took place. It's October 30th, 1983. It's week 9 of the NFL season, and as we officially hit the second half of the year, we have a big interconference matchup on our hands over in Philadelphia at Veterans Stadium, between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Colts. After both of these teams missed the playoffs the year before during the strike-shortened 1982 season, with the Colts going winless, both teams find themselves in a relatively decent spot halfway through the year. Both the Colts and Eagles enter this one with identical 4-4 records, with both teams sitting one game back of a wildcard spot. Win this game, and your odds of making it to the playoffs increase tremendously. Lose this one, and while you're not out of it by any means, as in the worst case scenario, you're 2 back with 7 to go, so you've still got time to catch up and claw your way out of this. You've definitely got an uphill climb the rest of the way, where you don't exactly have a whole lot of room for error. And if this game can be defined by one thing, it was without a doubt the Eagles and their incredible ability to shoot themselves in the foot and get in their own way. Because they played such a sloppy game that when all was said and done, they turned the ball over 5 times, with the team fumbling 3 times and with starting quarterback Ron Jaworski throwing 2 interceptions. As a side note, if you want to learn more about Jaworski and his time in Philadelphia, click the card in the upper right corner. Still, despite the fact that the Eagles lost the turnover battle by 5, as the Colts never turned it over all game, the Eagles are still somehow right in this. And thanks to a 6-yard touchdown pass by Jaworski to Harold Carmichael, they lead it 21-19 in the fourth quarter. And they are in a pretty good position to start the second half of the season above 500. However, following a 30-yard field goal by Raul Alegre with about 2 minutes left in the contest, the Colts now led it 22-21. If you want to learn more about Alegre and his NFL career, click the card in the upper right corner. Still, following one more defensive stop by the Eagles after a turnover on their end, Philly got the ball back with just over 1 minute left. The bad news was that they had no timeouts left in their back pocket. Anything in the field of play, especially anything short or negative, was going to be a disaster. The good news was that they had the ball and only needed to go about 40 yards to set up Tony Franklin for the game winner. As the scientists once said, nobody said it was easy. However, by no means was this going to be impossible. It was entirely in the realm of possibility to drive down the field and win the game with a field goal, even with the limited time on the clock. Because sure enough, on the very first play of the drive, after a 29-yard completion from Jaworski to Michael Haddix, the Eagles were in Baltimore territory. All of a sudden, you've got a chance. First down after the big play, and the pass falls incomplete. Second down, and once again, the pass falls incomplete. Third down, and once again, the pass falls incomplete. After a scare by the Baltimore defense, they recovered nicely and have forced the Eagles into 4th and 10 from the 45-yard line. This is the ball game right here. If you don't get the first down with 22 seconds left, this game is over, and the Colts are walking away with an upset victory that not a lot of people saw coming. Except, Campbell decides not to leave the offense out there on the field, because for some reason, he sends his kicker, Tony Franklin, out there to try a 62-yard field goal for the win. Seems like a really bold strategy, especially since in the entire history of the NFL at that point, only one kick had ever been made from 60-plus yards, when Tom Dempsey did it for the New Orleans Saints in a 1970 game against the Detroit Lions, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. A kick that would have been the NFL record for a kicker with 10 toes, or a 10-yard play to try and get a bit closer. Seems rather odd that he's trying the field goal. Still, this is what Campbell was going to do. And the end result?
And this is within a half yard of that. The alert for the fake. Now they're going to kick it. It's going to be way short.
Their only chance, though.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, not even close. The kick is wide and is a solid 15 yards short. And the Colts survive, with boos raining down from the stands from angry fans. And understandably so. Now on the surface, trying the 62-yard field goal might not seem absurd. Heck, Franklin's hit a 59-yarder before in the NFL, when he hit one against the Dallas Cowboys in 1979, although he hadn't hit one longer than 51 in each of the past 3 seasons. And in college, even though he was aided by a kicking tee, he hit a couple of kicks from the 60-plus yard range while playing for Texas A&M. Plus, you just try 3 straight passing plays. None of them worked. You've got nothing really to lose field position-wise by trying this, since the game is over if you don't get it either way. I'm sure you can make a legitimate argument that getting 10 yards and then getting a field goal of 50-plus yards, especially back in 1983, was going to be really tough. So having to do one tough thing by kicking this 62-yard field goal is more preferable than having to do 2 tough things and convert a 4th and long and then hit a long field goal. That's why this isn't a dumb decisions episode. That's for something that looks horrible the moment that it happens. You don't need any additional context to realize this is really bad. So even though Campbell is a horrible head coach, I'll give him a pass for the time being. And then came the post-game press conferences. And that's when you realize that Campbell is an absolute moron. Because in the post-game presser, kicker Tony Franklin was asked about that 62-yard attempt. And if Franklin said something along the lines of, "I was feeling good today, I told Campbell that I can hit from anything inside 65, and I just didn't kick it cleanly like I know I can," fine. Except Franklin did not say that. Because Tony Franklin said, in no uncertain terms, that there was no way whatsoever that he was going to make that kick. That coach never even asked him if he could hit it from that far, and that this play had about a 0% chance at working. As Franklin said, this one would have had to have been perfect. When they dial my number, I have to keep a good attitude, but the ball just wasn't carrying well today. The coach said field goal, so that's what I tried to do. So let me get this straight. At no point whatsoever did Campbell ask you what your target line was. He just arbitrarily made up a number out of thin air? How stupid do you have to be to do that? If your kicker tells you straight up that he cannot make this kick, this is not in his range, and he does not have the leg to do it, you don't send him out there. He is telling you that this play will not work. You have to take his word for it. If I'm a singer and I tell my bandmates that I warmed up my voice and I cannot hit a high C, so I can't belt a C5 today, so we should take the song down a half step or a whole step, or just not do the song today, you don't force the singer to sing in a key where he can't hit that note. If I'm a golfer and I tell my caddy that I was warming up on the range today and I can't hit my 5-iron more than 200 today, and it's 220 to the hole, and I have to hit the green in order to have any shot at winning this hole, and my caddy tells me to go for the green with my 5-iron, I'm firing him on the spot. The kicker is telling you his physical limitations. He is flat up telling you what he can and cannot do. And on this day, with the weather and the wind, and with how he was feeling, he was telling you he could not hit from 62 yards out. And you decide, without even consulting him, to just send him out for what would have been the longest field goal in NFL history by a 10-toed kicker? Are you crazy? As for what Campbell said, his explanation for why he ignored Franklin's limitations was absolutely stupid. Because even though Franklin flat out said, "Coach, I cannot hit from 62," Campbell thought that trying a 62-yard field goal was their only option. Because even though he wanted to try one more passing play to get a bit closer, since he knew that he wasn't in Franklin's range, that they could not have done that, because they were out of timeouts. I'm sorry, what? You couldn't do that because you were out of timeouts? Do you realize how absurd that sounds? Anyone who watched the ending to the Baylor-TCU game yesterday knows how absurd that sounds. There were 22 seconds left. It's not as though there were 4 seconds left. You had 22 whole seconds. You could have gone to the sidelines if you were that concerned about the clock. Because last I checked, oh yeah, the clock stops if you go out of bounds. You still could have gone over the middle of the field. And unless your guys were walking at the pace of a turtle, you would have been able to get one more play off to throw the ball out of bounds to stop the clock and then try the field goal. That's like a basketball coach drawing up an inbounds play where the goal is to get his shooter a half-court shot because he doesn't feel like they can get it closer to the hoop, even though there's 8 seconds left on the clock. You have to be absolutely terrible at clock management to not be able to get multiple plays off with 22 seconds. And again, that's completely ignoring the fact that the sideline exists. And if you were that concerned about the clock, you always just could have called a play there. I mean, holy cow. That is such an alarming and appalling lack of situational awareness on the part of Marion Campbell that, quite frankly, I don't even know what to say. You want to talk about losing the press conference? That's what Campbell did here, because he took an already controversial decision and somehow made it even worse by giving some of the stupidest reasoning possible. And I know you went 0 for 3 on your last 3 passes when you tried to get closer, but I guarantee you, calling another passing play has a greater chance of success compared to a kicker who flat out says that he cannot make this kick. Because the odds of a kicker making that kick when he has already expressed his physical limitations are 0%. So yeah, Marion Campbell was an awful head coach, and this play truly exemplifies that and just how badly he was in over his head. Because everything about this is a prime example of how not to handle an end-of-game situation if you are the man in charge. If you're torn between two options, and one option has a chance of success, no matter how slim it is, and the other option has no chance of success, as told by the veteran who has to be the one responsible for pulling this off, then always pick the option that has a probability greater than 0. If you don't know how to manage a clock with 22 seconds left, and you're scared that time is going to run out on you, then either you need to reevaluate how you practice, you need to fire your offensive coordinator, or you need to find another line of work. And if this is your second stint as a head coach, and you show that you learned nothing from that first debacle, then maybe being a head coach just isn't for you. Because for Marion Campbell, the Swamp Fox was swamped with criticism after the dumbest field goal in the near 90-year history of the Philadelphia Eagles franchise. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.